Okay, I think it's probably worth for us to go ahead. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you very much for joining us today. We're going to have a webinar regarding a anomaly detection for colleges and universities for higher education. My name is Jesus Pingarro. I'm BDM for UK and Ireland here at Flowmon, and with me I've got Stuart Smith, a senior research consultant. Stuart, with us?
Hi guys.
Perfect, brilliant. So we have a lot to talk today. So I would like to remind everyone that this webinar is interactive. I don't know, Stuart, if you can move on and perhaps put the agenda on the background.
There you go.
Ah, brilliant, perfect. So I would like to remind everyone that this webinar is interactive, and primarily there's two ways of getting in touch with us, to either ask questions using the GoToMeeting applet. Just ask questions so that we can potentially steer the presentation of the slides. The other one is raise your hand, and obviously we'll reach out to you and just find out what you're after. So with that in mind, we can go ahead. I think the topic is quite interesting. We're going to start with the challenges that institutions of higher education have, especially obviously the security challenges and the IT network challenges. Stuart, mind going ahead? Perfect. So I guess that we couldn't really understand the challenges that organizations of higher education face without perhaps spending a bit of time trying to clarify why they are such an attractive target. And there's several reasons for that. You know, one of the reasons, and potentially the main reasons, is that universities hold a massive amount of data, lots of data. We're talking about sensitive data about the students, about parents, about alumni, you know, about staff and faculty. So we're talking social security numbers, bank details, so sensitive data per se. And on top of that, you know, universities tend to hold this data sometimes for decades after the students have finished their degrees of their students. And on top of that, as well as being sensitive, as you guys know, universities and higher education organizations have or play a massive part regarding research and development. Some of them may engage in high volumes of research, and more often than not, they're gonna hold house proprietary data from a wide range of corporations and even government entities. And we could talk about very sensible data, like, for example, research around climate modeling, you know, certain topics that hold real value, monetary value, financial value, if that makes sense. And finally, you know that some universities are going to have ties to local and perhaps regional hospitals, and therefore the type of data that they're going to hold, of records that they're going to hold, are also going to contain confidential medical data. So, you know, data is one of the primary points why universities are such an attractive target for hackers. While data is important, one of the reasons why they are also very attractive is that they have a very decentralized structure. So we were talking about the different type of data. The thing is that more often than not, each type of data is going to be stored at different parts within the university. So, for example, I don't know, students' data may be kept separately. If a university has several colleges, each college is going to have the the details of the students that attend to that college. If we're talking about, for example, sensitive data related to corporate or government grants, they're going to be housed in the departments that receive those grants. So, you know, having a decentralized structure may give cyber criminals a very wide range of paths to exploit vulnerabilities on each one of these different systems that are holding that data. And generally speaking, once again, once you are considering a decentralized structure, universities also seem to have like a parallel there. You know, they have an organizational vulnerability. By that I mean that they tend to lack the sort of top-down structure that is quite useful when you're trying to enforce security policies, because the responsibility for keeping the data safe is going to be held within different people, within different stakeholders. And that makes by default, things very, very difficult to track, very difficult to enforce. It makes much more difficult for everyone to embrace that sort of security culture and obviously put it into practice, that if you were to have that sort of hierarchy, and policy driven. And on top of that, there tends to be, the board of a university are formed, generally speaking, by memorable people, very intelligent people, that they tend to get to those positions based on achieving or achievements within following an academic path. And we found, well, not necessarily, Deloitte found that there's a huge disconnect between higher members of the board of a university and obviously general trends about IT. And around 50% of universities, or the board of the universities, will not have a CIO as a member of the board. And what that happens is that obviously it has consequences. The board members are already busy enough for them to obviously be fully aware of the trends that are happening, and for them to be really aware of the consequences of not establishing a very solid cybersecurity. So the lack of a very technical IT-driven person within a university board is also a huge disadvantage, I guess, when we're considering the challenges of universities. And finally, universities' open access culture means that bring your own device and bringing your device to the university campus is completely allowed. Is quite a common factor. The problem, I guess, is that administrators, faculty, and staff, like pretty much everyone, or the majority of employees that are not really skilled in IT, are never going to be fully aware of the extent to which they may be exposing, the data that they are accessing, and therefore, obviously, that may represent a risk. Do you mind going ahead, Steven?
Yep.
Now, one of the main things, I guess, or the challenges that a university has, or a higher education, is that you don't find the same boundaries that you will find in a traditional enterprise. Everyone can access the university, whereas not anyone can access, for example, the premises of an enterprise. However, the similarities between universities and corporate are around the technological advancements, I guess, that around IT, for example. So universities, networks are no longer static. The services that they deliver are no longer static. Universities are taking exactly the same advantage that the rest of the organizations, regardless of the vertical. They take in exactly the same advantages from the progress, the evolution of IT, and the way that they are delivering the services, the way that they are fulfilling their mission, if that makes sense, is completely tied to that. So, for example, most of universities have embraced digital transformation. Everyone is aware of distance learning or e-learning. We're talking about delivering pretty much close to 100% of that service through the internet, through a computer, through a digital, I guess, medium. And what that means is that all the advantages that brings to us, all the advantages that, for example, virtualization or software-defined networking, all that increase in server density that is required to deliver those services have also created a massive gap. So delivering a services between A and B, 20 years ago, it was a case of diagnosing a piece of cable, right? An enabled cable that goes from A to B. Nowadays, the cable is still there, but there are many, many layers on top of that cable. And you need to have better visibility in order to be able to support those services. Hence why we are a stronger believer that visibility is key. I'm going ahead. Because that traffic that is being generated, and more now, and every year that goes by, the traffic increases. That's what really holds the value of a university, but a university or any entity for that matter. Unless that you can see what is being delivered, unless you can have eyes on that sort of traffic, and you can see that traffic, you're not going to be able to measure that traffic. You're not going to be able to quantify how well or how bad you're delivering a service. And worse still, you cannot really protect what you cannot see. So it's very, very important that that entities really try to think about IT service and delivery from a visibility perspective. The consequences of attacks for universities are not really a laughing matter. On one side, we have operational impact, and we've discussed about how universities are embracing digital transformation. Now we're talking about them being able. Downtime is actually preventing universities from being able to deliver a service, and the service is actually part of a higher education organization mission. So it's really important to understand that downtime for universities, to some degree, may mean that students cannot access to their resources. Some of them may not even be able to make exams, to upload dissertations. So the impact from an operational perspective, it can be severely spread across multiple type of stakeholders. From a financial perspective, the impact is also quite substantial. And there was a research institute called Flowmon that came up with a figure which, after factoring in all the different costs, including the customer loss, the time to detect a breach, the cost of fixing identified vulnerabilities, compensations, and things like that, they came with a figure that said that the average data breach cost that institutions of higher learning have to face are around 200 quid per record compromised in an attack. And when an attack happens, we're talking about thousands of records being compromised. So financially, that has a huge impact for an organization. And finally, or last but not least, reputational damage could be even worse than the two that we've discussed. We've said before, corporations are less likely to be interested in partnering with universities that research data has been breached, or with institutions that do not have a clear, very strong, resilient plan of set of procedures for dealing with cyber threats. And at least in UK, obviously many universities are going to have to comply with several frameworks, especially when we're talking about grants and things like that. So it's not all doom and gloom, though. I guess that still, what can we do exactly, I guess, to protect a university's network?
Okay, cool. Thanks for that, Chus. So yeah, I mean, obviously, I think like Chus just alluded to, visibility is the key area, and again, that slide, you can't alert on, you can't monitor what you can't see. The figure there is obviously, when we're looking from a security perspective, cyber security perspective, whatever you want to call it, 74% of those security issues are actually insider threats. So a lot of customers we will speak to will say, oh, well, we've got firewalls, we've got IDS, we've got IPS, which is great, obviously, for potentially stopping outside in attacks. But if you're looking at potential spreads of malware within your own network, then obviously that's a key thing, and that's where Flowmon as a solution can obviously help our customers. So we're looking, the whole area that we focus on is anomaly detection, or network behavioral analytics, or end user behavioral analytics, whatever you want to call it. It's looking for odd stuff that is happening on your network, anomalies, stuff that hasn't been there before. So when we look at malicious activity, looking for phishing scams, it's part of the limitation of that is the training of staff not to click on, if you see an email and it looks too good to be true, then the chances are it is too good to be true, and it will be some sort of scam, it will be some sort of spam, it will be something. And that comes from re-education. That's telling people not to click on an email that they weren't expecting, or a link that looks a bit suspect. Don't click on it. That's what it is. It's as easy as. And when you do see anomalies, what do you do about it? How quickly can you get to the bottom of it? Like Chus says, if you're looking at £200 per record that is compromised from your college or university or higher education, whatever it is, that pound, shilling and pence soon adds up to a lot of money. And then the big reputation. So it's how quickly can you hold your hands up and say, yes, we've got a threat, but we're going to resolve it, and we're going to look at it within the next 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever it is. To be able to do that, obviously you need to have the right tools in place, and looking for network anomalies is the key point of that. Looking for things that aren't normally that aren't normally happening across your network. Antivirus is great. Having the latest antivirus signatures is great, but obviously that doesn't take into account things like zero-day attacks. That doesn't take into things like ransomware. You know, things that come into your network via USB sticks or via third-party media, or again bringing your own device. Those machines could be littered with whatever's on there. So it's being able to alert on it, look at those traffic anomalies, but also integrate that with a centralized SIEM solution, for example, because you know we don't expect people to be sitting in front of our dashboards waiting for stuff to happen. We have our engine sat there in the background looking at your network traffic and then alerting and sending that through to Splunk or QRadar or ArcSight or any number of centralized SIEM solutions. So the key area for us is obviously is looking at an enterprise-wide, giving you enterprise-wide visibility, you know, not looking at particular segments of the network, giving you that 50,000 foot view of saying, right, okay, what's happening on my estate? What's the top traffic? What's the top events? What are the top malware infections? Have I had any SSH dictionary tags? What's happening on my network? And then being able to reduce the damage that those potential threats do have on your network. So if there is somebody trying to do a dictionary attack to try and guess usernames and passwords, you will know about that because we will recognize that activity. If somebody's communicating with blacklisted IP addresses, we will detect that and we will alert on it. And again, that all falls into whether you call it user and entity behavioral analytics, whether you call it network behavioral analytics, whether you call it anomaly detection, which is what we call our solution, anomaly detection system. They all fit under the same banner of looking for spurious activity that is happening on your network across your estate. And what we're finding
is to change the name once again, right? Because they seem to change the name every 2 years. So.
Yeah, it's always changed. Absolutely. They might as well they should just call it looking for dodgy stuff on your network, because that's essentially what we're doing. And the key thing for us is, historically, from a monitoring perspective, customers have always looked at that assumption that we need to go to packets, we need to go into packet capture, we need to set up port mirrors and spans and taps and packet brokers. We need to deploy probes across our entire estate to get to the level of detail that we want. This day and age with networks, that was fine when it was 1 meg, 10 meg, 100 meg, 1 gig. Now you're looking at 10 gig, 100 gig, going up to 400 gig. Deploying multiple probes across those types of estates just isn't feasible for the majority of enterprises we talk to. And with the bulk of traffic going to potentially be encrypted by 2019, 2020, having that packet level detail and not being able to unencrypt it, how much use is that? So from our solution, what we're looking at doing is talking to customers. They're looking for an alternative to packets, and that alternative is flow data, which is great for us because you've already invested in that technology. Your technology within your enterprise, your switches, your routers, your firewalls, your IDS, your IPS devices will all have the capability of sending flow data, whether it's NetFlow or IPFix or whatever it is. You can send that through to one of our centralized Flowmon collectors, and you will start being able to not just monitor your network, but start doing an anomaly detection across your entire estate. And it's far more flexible than pinpointing strategic points for packet capture. You know, so we figure there we've got 500 times more scalable, which is completely feasible because one of our largest collectors, a single appliance by Flowmon, can cope with 400,000 flows per second, which, you know, is a phenomenal volume of traffic. You know, so that we then go into the realms of a distributed architecture, which potentially has the ability to give you an unlimited volume of flows per second. You know, that is giving enterprises, whether it's university or colleges or telcos or whatever, huge amounts of visibility to see what's happening on their network. And if you make changes to your network, if you add a new switch, if you add a new router, a new firewall, you enable NetFlow, send it through to our box, we're monitoring it. Again, if you're looking to do that with packets, if you move a switch, you're then going to move it. Do you set up a port mirror? Do you have to move the tap? Do you have to break a WAN link to get that level of detail? So when your network grows, we will obviously adapt with that environment that we're seeing. So from a Flowmon perspective, there's 4 very simple steps, or 3 actually, with a 4th, which is, you can choose to do that. Deploy a Flowmon collector, which is the central focal point for all your flow data. Configure your devices to send flow data to us. If you wanted to do layer 7, we're not saying that we're going to completely replace packet captures, but what we do with our probes is talk to customers and say, right, okay, put these in strategic points on your network where you are likely to want to go to that layer 7 detail. The rest of your enterprise and estate, your 50,000-foot view, who, what, where, when, what anomalies, who's doing what traffic is, what apps, all that level of detail, let's get that from flow data. Let's only use layer 7 as and when we really need to. And we've got a great example here of the Flowmon solution. So if we look at this solution here, what we've got here is we can see straight away that our appliance has automatically categorized that traffic. So we've got green, which is legitimate traffic, and then we've automatically prioritized low, medium, and high priority. So you can see for this time period here, just after 8:20, and this time period here, we had a spike in high priority events that we've seen across the network. So let's drill down into that and say, right, okay, what machines were involved in that event? So we can see here that this IP address started doing a scan. Now what that will do would just be doing a port scan for port 22. Are there any ports open that I can sort of get into? Yes, I found an SSH port open. Right, I will now try a SSH authentication attack. That's what we call a dictionary attack. And what that will do is a brute force attack to say, right, okay, can I guess this password over a period of time? Now, what we can do is we can distinguish between somebody doing an SSH dictionary attack and successfully looking at those, getting those events through. And what that will do, there'll be a difference in size between that conversation. The amount of packets for login fail, login fail, login fail, login successful, authenticate, there'll be a different size in that conversation. We can then say, right, okay, well then there's this other machine, which is the victim of the attack. They've responded to that scan, as we can see there, and then they've gone and looked at some blacklisted IP addresses. They've then, from that infected machine, started to do an RDP dictionary attack to try and get onto Windows servers. So we can see this is the horizontal SSH attack. We've done a port scan. They've done an SSH attack. It was unsuccessful. Successful against this machine here. So we've got a list of IP addresses there that it was successful against. So we can say, right, okay, what's that machine doing? They've connected into that box. They're now within your network. They've now infected a machine with some malware. That is now connected to a botnet control and command and control domain. Those blacklisted IP addresses and domains, phishing domains, are all built into the Flowmon anomaly detection solution. So they are updated every 6 hours. So we have subscriptions with people like Looking Glass and some other people like that, where we have their databases and we upload those to our collector. So like I say, those are updated every 6 hours. So we can see that infected machine is now communicating with a known botnet location. If we wanted to, we can start looking at a bit more detail. If we were exporting this to a SIEM solution, the syslog event that we send out will contain all this level of information. So what type of attack was it, IP address, destination, how long it lasted for, all that level of detail. And then if we wanted to, we can now go into the flow per flow conversations. And now we're looking at raw flow data for that conversation: source, destination, timestamp, protocols involved, how many packets were sent, when did they successfully log into that machine, what was the duration of that attack, all those levels of details. And now we're looking at, we can see there's an ICMP anomaly. So they have increased the payload of that ICMP. So somebody's well into our network, they're looking, they've infected a machine, but also we've looked at an ICM packet anomaly. ICMP being a network protocol, 9 times out of 10 firewalls will let that through. If you do a payload ICMP attack, you're basically spoofing ICMP traffic, and that payload can contain absolutely anything. So then, we can look again. We've got another scan, and now they're attempting to do scans across our Windows remote desktop servers, RDP, remote desktop protocol, to try and do RDP into some Windows servers. So it's very simple from a Flowmon solution to very quickly start from a high level of what events am I seeing on my network. So, right, okay, we've got a spike here. Few clicks down the road, 5 or 6 button clicks down the road, we can see which machine is infected. They're connecting to a command and control location. They're looking at botnets. They then that machine then does an RDP scan to try and get onto our Windows boxes. Like I say, 5, 6, 7 button clicks down the road. All that can be obviously exported, alerted on, sent out via email, sent out via SNMP. SMTP, sorry, sent out via syslog, sent out on a weekly report, a scheduled report, a monthly report. However you want to look at that data, we can send that out from the Flowmon solution. And like I say, what we find is we'll do a POC for maybe our APM solution or our network performance monitoring solution. And whilst we're in there, we'll say, well, let's put on the ADS license. And people say, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, we've got a firewall and we've got antivirus, so, we're okay. But 9 times out of 10, we will enable anomaly detection, and we will find something on that network within 5 or 10 minutes after config. We did a POC recently, and the customer said, yeah, put it on, but I don't think you'll find anything. We enabled it. 5 minutes later, there was one of their internal users transferring gigs worth of data, downloading gigs worth of data from BitTorrent, which we pick up because we understand the way that BitTorrent and peer-to-peer networking works. We see a user connecting to thousands of servers downloading small amounts of information. That's peer-to-peer traffic, so we will pick that up. And, it was an eye-opener for them, because then all of a sudden we can see that one of their users was sending out thousands of emails, and they were sending out spam email that they weren't aware of. So it's always interesting. It's always something that is a real eye-opener when we do speak to anybody about it, and just getting it into people's networks to say, look, we appreciate that you've got firewalls and antivirus and IDS and IPS, but do you really know from a visibility perspective and a traffic anomaly perspective what is actually happening within your estate and your enterprise? So
I think there's very, very valid point, Stuart, there, because as you said, visibility is key. But again, one of the things is that if you were to use the traditional packet capture based deployment, yes, they're very efficient, but at the same time, nowadays, they just not cost effective. Would you agree, right? You cannot really deploy it everywhere on your network. The amounts of traffic that is being transmitted is going to be overwhelming. And it just doesn't give you the same value that it used to give you like 5 years ago or 10 years ago even. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the days have well and truly gone when people will just buy several tens or 20s or hundreds of probes and distribute them around their network, because it's just not cost effective these days to have the upheaval, not of just trying to set up port mirrors and taps and packet brokers, but also 100 gig interfaces on probes. It's just not cost effective. And if you can get 80 to 90% of that capability by exploiting technology that you already have in place via flow from switches and routers and firewalls, then that's what we're seeing with our customers. It's a real eye-opener, and it's doing what it says on the tip. It's Absolutely. Delivering what they want.
So going back to your example, for example, it is clear that you have packet capture and you start to analyze the payload on the ICMP packet, and yes, you're gonna have perhaps the passwords and the name of the accounts, but at the same time, we're talking that you've been able to detect that and potentially remediate that just using NetFlow, right? Which is 500 times more scalable and 500 times, I guess.
Like I said, we're not looking to completely replace the sort of probe packet level analysis. We do probes and we add those as a, just another level of granular detail, but put those probes in key strategic places across your network. And that's where, you know, working and sitting down with our customers and saying, right, okay, well, what do you want to get? You know, here's your 50,000 foot view. What are the key points where you think you'd probably do an automatic, see an event, a high critical event, start an automatic packet capture, filter that out, look at that, open it in Wireshark if you wanted to go into that level of detail. You know, so that's where, you know, from a far more consultative approach, where we'll work with our customers and say, well, what, you know, here's your network. Let's work together and find out the key points where we can deploy our technology.
Absolutely. There were a couple of questions. One of them was, can this technology be integrated with SIM solutions like QRadar from IBM? You did mention that obviously you could export in syslog, but how can it be integrated?
We also have white papers detailing where we integrate with QRadar and ArcSight and Splunk. Yeah, those are the three sort of main ones. But anything, you know, that can accept syslog, you know, our syslog export is very rich, so all the event details will be in there. But if there's specifics that people want, then just email me or uki@flowmon.com, and we can send you the relevant white papers.
Perfect. Finally, there was another question around NetFlow and cloud environments. And when we were talking about, there was a slide that says that NetFlow is already adapted for heterogeneous environment. That's exactly what it means, right? Packet capture cannot really deal with SDN, with virtualization as effective or as efficient, or even with cloud environments as NetFlow can, obviously, because that sort of technology or metadata or telemetry protocol is already inbuilt into the backend systems that form that sort of ecosystem, like virtual and software-defined networks and things like that. So perfect. The last thing to say, I guess, is just that anyone that has joined this webinar, if you don't really are 100% about, you know, what's going on your network, I would really invite you to reach out to us. We can put something together that may be very, very helpful for you to really realize how secure is your network, if at all. But you know what they say, if you don't see it, you know, you could pretend that it's secure. So if you do want to find out a bit more, send us an email at uki@flowmon.com, and hopefully we can arrange something to prove the level of visibility and what visibility can do for your environment. Stuart, thank you so much for your time today. It's been great insight you've provided. There are very, very valid points. Security has to be an overall thing. As you said, you know, you could spend $1 million in tools, but sometimes training employees in identifying phishing is as effective as investing $1 million in a SIM solution. And finally, that Flow could be a very, very cost-effective alternative to traditional tools. So I would invite everyone to really explore those possibilities. Stuart, thank you very much again. Speak to you soon.
If anybody wants a copy of our slides, you know, or anything, just send us an email to uki@flowmon.com and any questions. So I hope you found it useful.
I'm sure they will. All right, perfect. Thank you very much, Stu.
Cheers. Goodbye.